It kind of came via Pete, really. I got an invite to play with a certain band that had lost a guitarist over the summer, and they were doing festivals and stuff. And I think that kind of re-instigated me and Pete talking it regularly. I mean, we've talked quite a lot over the years anyway. We've always remained friends. I think through that, Richard might have got wind of Pete being in discussion with me about various things. And I got the call one day. He's sitting down, Nick. Yeah, what's happened? Nothing bad, is it? Yeah, Richard wants to get the band back together. What do you think? And I kind of had a moment of hesitation. Yeah, at that point, I kind of rationalised a lot of, all of us have grown up, had a lot of time to think about things. But hopefully, we're older and wiser. And it just seemed, I mean, I put a huge chunk of my life into this, and there is no way that I would turn my back on it if there was ever a chance of it working again. It's really not for, money's nice. You get paid to be in a band. There is nothing better, really. Going to different countries and getting paid to play in front of thousands of people. What's wrong with that, So, yeah, it was at a point where I kind of made my peace with it and come to understand a lot of things that were quite silly at the time, really. And I think me and Si, because we're probably the closest out of a lot of us, and we sort of arrived at the same point at the same time, I think. So it just seemed a very natural thing to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing experience.
A lot of time thinking it'd never happen earlier on, or like last 10 years. So to actually get another album, and especially that quality, is brilliant, you know what I mean? Keep for the rest of your life.
I can't quite put a precise date on it, because it seems like a long time ago. But it was just a series of phone calls. It was quite a sunny day in the garden, and suddenly this shocking brainwave arrived in my mind to see what they thought about. Maybe the time was right, and maybe the climate was right, and maybe we were old enough to be able to deal with it. And just make a noise was the primary motive, I think, for getting the band back together, is putting those individuals in a room and creating a sound. I think, I think we're at a good age. We're not particularly old. We're not past it. I think we've still got our musical sensibilities. So, really, that was the primary motive. Obviously, there's baggage and things like that you've got to sift through, and there always will be. It's no bed of roses. It's not some Mills and Boone scene running down the beach, with a sunset. It's none of that. It's a case that these four people make a pretty unique sound together. Are you up for it? Yeah.
I was there first, so I went in, took my drums in, set up, and then sat waiting for everyone to come in individually. Well, yeah, I was a little bit. But
yeah,
we went in and started playing, it was great.
It's quite easy, Richard picked me up from the station in his Mini and brought us down to the studio, had a bit of a coffee and a chat for an hour, and after that we were playing music. It's like old times, really,
You can hear it on record, the excitement. I like actually being in a room together playing.
And I think, what was amazing is to know after all that time to still have that chemistry and not really have to, discuss much about it. It's just like, right, this is what we do, and it sounds amazing. It was instantly so satisfying to be able to pick up your instruments and do that, because the first time we all met was actually in the studio and all the gear was set up. So, that was a thrill in itself, just being able to do that. And the first week we recorded the majority of the album, really, in the first couple of weeks, to be honest. It was that quick. Having not played together for such a long time, you have a backlog of riffs and ideas and things, and they'll come in, maybe subconsciously. And obviously Richard brings completed songs to the table, or songs that have maybe got a verse and they'll be jammed, and different processes for different songs, really. But a lot of what we do is from jamming, because that's how we learned to play together, really, when we were 16 in Wigan. It was just a matter of locking ourselves in a little dingy room, not this like this actually, but with black curtains for days on end, coming out in the daylight, from the age of 16, really, 17.
Probably not, no. I mean, I can function in a studio without tension, and I think the history of this band's proved that the tension's not necessarily in the making of the music. It's probably what goes on beyond that. It's nothing to do with the act of creativity. The music making side of it isn't driven by friction. Actually, it's driven by unity. And the only place that we can find a single voice or a true understanding of each other is probably when we're actually making music anyway. So, and I think we're old enough now to take it as it comes. We're not going to go out and tour the world twice over. We're not going to put ourselves in any of those positions. We're not going to burn the name of the Verve out in one big bang. We've made this record and we're going to play some gigs and. In a way, we're just kind of approaching it in a much clearer way, I think, and a way that can keep the name of the Verve alive. Because another motivation was I couldn't quite get in my head why on earth the Verve should be considered to be something that isn't alive when the songs live every day on the radio still. Some songs that are 10 years old sound very fresh today and very contemporary and lyrically because they're dealing with quite basic human emotions. They'll never go out of time. So if we want to make a record in 5 years' time, we'll make it. If we don't, we won't. But we'll never, I hope, condemn the band to the sort of elephant's graveyard of rock and roll.
Well, I've got better and all that, but it's still the same influences, still the same ideas and same with you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot, playing with a lot of other people over the last 10 years, and that's definitely made me a better musician. I never really want to get to that point where I'm some virtuoso guitar, and I don't think I ever will be, But having played with other people, a really great thing that I did the live shows with the Gorillas and working with Damon, that was a pure inspiration, actually, because to see someone so in love with the music and how much it matters. And, other artists, it's good to get a totally different insight into how other people work, compared to how we work. Having come from like jam-based things and working with artists who are maybe more, who are songwriters and really set in what they do and how they do it. For me, that's made me grow as a musician. So I think I'm much, much more confident than I was as a 17-year-old going in to make the first record, without a shadow of a doubt,
It's a funny thing, actually, because as Pete and Si have got better and better, it's almost like I feel like it's my duty to sort of rough it round the edges, really. It's a bit of a bizarre one, really, but I've got more comfortable with it over the years, but I'm more interested in sonics and something to trigger effects, really, and what I've come to realise over the years is it's more satisfying for me to have this kind of reduced thing that somebody said something slightly derogatory about me being a chorist, and that's probably what I do. I mean, I actually like that. I mean, given the framework of what's happening, especially with the Richards songs, it's gratuitous to sort of just plaster on more of the same, really. So in certain circumstances like that, that's easier for me, and I like that.
I think the key points that I look for or wanted to enjoy again or get out of it, where say there's a moment in Judas where it changes and, for want of a better word, the chorus happens. That was instantaneous, and that was a synergy moment where everybody's completely in tune and the whole thing changes and nobody cues anybody, nobody has a clue what's going to happen, but it happened. And those kind of accidents and moments are the things that really excited me about working with these people again, because that's the kind of stuff that we were always luckily really good at, was improvisation and making things up off the top of our heads. That kind of thing was exciting, really, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of the ideas for a while. A song like Appalachian Springs, I've attempted to record a couple of times, but the songs I brought to the table were perhaps through the first few weeks of listening to what we were creating together collectively, I started getting an idea of maybe the tunes that I could think of that could fit into this atmosphere and mood that we were creating. I mean, along with mortality and things that happened later on in my life, it gave me a sense of position in the scheme of things, and an urgency to do something. And also, I would hate to just spread a message of sort of nihilistic defeatism, which is so fashionable, you know, that sort of destroying yourself and people around you is somehow cool or is offering the world anything. It just isn't, you know. Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, Brian Wilson, you know, Pet Sounds, and all these things. There's so much love in them, ultimately, and it's not being ashamed to appreciate that that is the most powerful thing in the world. And when people hear it and they know it's real, they can't help but respond to it. So people take these basic things in many different directions, but hardly anyone seemingly comes from a direction that people can really, really relate to. So I was very surprised years ago when it first happened, and I was very surprised at all the different interpretations that you could have for one line. Like, say, obviously the drugs don't work was the killer. It was just amazing. Even today, you know, if someone gets done somebody on the Tour de France gets caught doping himself, you know, it's the drugs don't work on the sport and stuff. And it's amazing, and I think that is a great thing. It's one of the best proper things that's happened, is that somehow I've written some tunes that have crossed the boundaries like that and do become part of culture. Most of it, you know, has no truth in it whatsoever. I mean, I was very fortunate as a kid. My granddad lived next door. He introduced me to the Orion, the Bear, you know, the stars was a big thing. It was about walking. It was about ponds, tadpoles, trees hit by lightning, fires outside. You know, it was just a few fields, but he managed to bring in a lot of wonder into my mind at a very early age. It's a very confusing, for me personally, it's a confusing time to be alive. Our tribes have been broken up in a way. We've all moved away, you know, everybody, you know, when I was a kid, my nan and granddad lived next door. My other grandparents lived across the road. Very tight-knit situation, you know, and that kind of breaks down. You know, if you don't have a incredibly strong faith, you end up obviously questioning the meaning, the existence of what it's all about, and is there an answer, and, you know. So all those kind of things from day one have interested me, you know, the bigger questions, and it's not necessarily that I'm ever going to come up with the answer, but I do like brutal truths as well. That's why Bittersweet Symphony will always be, you know, I'll always enjoy that opening line. I like brutal truth and where that's going to lead us. Emotion comes out because a lot of it in the modern world is quite suppressed, I think, you know what I mean? And that's why I think my music, the Verve's music, my songs, I've had the oddest people come up to me in the street professing how they've affected them in many different ways, and I think that cuts through all sort of classes and social places where people are, you know, and almost like it allows them to express stuff that it is quite suppressed, you know what I mean? And that's, you know, mainly more in men than women, you know.
We did do it off and on because we did a couple of weeks and then we had to go on tour. We chose to go on tour in November and December. So we had to put it on pause November, December, came back in, I think it was February by the time we started again, wasn't it? Yeah. So yeah, there was a bit of a pause in the middle. But we got a lot of the backing tracks done in those first couple of weeks, so it was more a process of when we came back, listening through to see what we got, and we kind of realised, well, we kind of got the album here, you know what I mean, already. So from that point on, did we do any more recording? I can't remember.
Noise, like backing track, me and you got. apart from that, I think that was it.
Yeah.
For me and you.
Yeah, I think the first 2 weeks it was all pretty much sewn up. So the rest of it, was just
Nick and
overdubs and editing.
Editing
really,
and Nick and Richard doing overdubs.
The band, really, we used a lot of different engineers on this record. We used 3 different guys on this record. Cameron was the first in who recorded it all, and we used Tim Brann, who was in Dread Zone for a while, but he's like a master Pro Tools digital wizard. He did a lot of the editing with us, and Chris Potter worked with us, who'd worked with us previously on Urban Hymns. He came in at the last sort of thing to mainly get the greatest vocal performances, because he worked so well with Richard, really, So it was us overseeing the whole process, using the best guys that we could get our hands on at the time, really.
Sit and Wonder, looking back, I believe it starts from a guitar looper, Nick. He's like the king of the guitar loop. He's got this way of doing his guitars. He could build a symphony out of his guitars, and it's almost like he's not playing anything. I haven't discussed it with the others, but to me, when it kicks in, it's almost like it's like Dick Dale meets God knows what, Led Zeppelin. It's got a kind of groove to it. It's almost like the Rolling People from Urban Hymns. It's got this darkness, and lyrically, it's like a rite and passage song. It's a song where someone's literally searching for the light, searching for salvation. The section at the end is just amazing. The guitars are just, the amount of different influences slightly that you can hear from some of the greats is amazing. It could be Peter Green one minute, it's like Tom Verlaine the next, then it's Neil Young.
Sit and Wonder was kind of birthed, if you like, second or third day, I think it was, of the first week we got together. It was like a strange little loop going. Maybe 10 minutes later, Sive got this almighty sort of crushing groove going. One of the signature guitar lines is actually me checking that the guitar's working. The bit at the beginning with the duff note. Diddly-ding. I was like, is it on? It's like serendipity again, and I think, recognising that is something that we've become very adept at. And suddenly ideas are getting generated, and one of Rich's best vocals, I think, as well. I don't know where he pulled it from. The lyrics are really heavy, and again, it was one of these, quite a lot of the tracks on the album, we forgot what the key sort of moments were on, and when we came to edit at the start of this year, we realised we had something resembling a song in there. What we didn't realise was that there was something resembling a pop song in there, and as it's developed over time, technology being what it is now, that later on you can revisit what you've done. It's a Can ethic, really, that don't worry about that really awful bit that you just played there, because later on down the line something great's going to happen, and it's almost sort of giving yourself a free rein.
It was one of the first things we did, wasn't
In
it?
the first 3 days, yeah. Made up on the spot, most of it as well, isn't it?
And yeah, like you say, if you've heard I don't know if you've heard the one that it was born from, because it's kind of edited, like a jam that's been edited. But yeah, you can actually hear the riff coming together and everyone getting the parts together, and it kind of fuses all together instantly. And it was one of the first things, if not the first thing that we played in 10 years or whatever.
And that's a classic for me. I think probably one of my favourite things. And playing it live is just. They're a bit sort of stomach churning, really, to play that live,
Yeah, Lover's Noise, which, given a few days in the studio, I was working a lot with a vocoder, an old vocoder I had in the studio, and created the vocal loop. And as soon as I heard that vocal loop, that was it. There's been a few times in my career, or whatever you want to call it, where you just know that this is universal. This is like, given the chance, if the world could hear it, the world would get into it. And that's so rare, I think, when something within a few seconds can grab people. Really, lyrically, in a way, I think if you look at it as a sort of the first few lines of kind of remake of Jerusalem by William Blake. Willow's feet in ancient times. It's the feet in modern times. It's bright prosaic malls instead of dark satanic mills. And again, I think it goes back to that internal struggle of my own, that search for love, and it's what we're all searching for, I think. And that internal battle is the battle that I will always have lyrically, perhaps, or with my songs. It's about perhaps my own internal battle.
Love is Noise was kind of 11th hour segment of a greater whole, Columbo, which was 2 days of jamming, and then at some point Richard revisited the disco section and put a hard kick drum on it and did the high vocal line that you hear on it now, and then we started stacking stuff on it.
It comes from a jam that we, again, same thing with Woodtide, and like it's taken from like a 4-bar loop of that. And Richard took a 4-bar loop, didn't he?
That's right, kind of like a futuristic sci-fi sort of jam that keeps evolving and evolving. And it was the way we play with a natural ebb and flow. It reached a certain point and a certain tempo. And Richard picked out this really good loop from it, like Pete said, a 4-bar loop, and Richard took that away and wrote the melody on top, put some keyboards on it, and we took it back and put live bass and drums, played it live.
Played it live in America, and then went back and redid a lot of stuff on it.
On an American tour,
just
played
to give it
over.
more of a live feel.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's typical Verve, I suppose. It was like, a really good jam, choosing a really good bit, working on that bit and creating a song out of it. Richard seems to have a gift for being able to create choruses over what's a verse and, make these big lifts, which, he's done before on Bittersweet Symphony, etc. And it works really well, people singing ooh, vocal hook straight away, so you knew that, that we're onto something with it,
It was an idea Richard come in with, rather be, and again it's the same kind of thing without, it's not actually structured, but he come in with a definite idea, and the vocals kind of carry it, and then we just put our own things over the top, separate, like. That's
a similar process. It was another one, set chords, no change in it, musically, the chords don't shift. Yeah, and Richard played it on the piano, and we all kind of did our bits, and it just keeps growing and growing, the way we work. I guess we've got a method that we've just kind of hit across over years of doing this, of jams and editing and putting bits together, and it's like fitting a puzzle together,
instantly when it starts sitting on something and everything starts on a gel round and something's happening, and you can hear everyone else playing off everyone else, and when it starts moving to other places. But yeah, when it happens good, you know it does. You can tell it's there straight away.
I have moments where you have the headphones on, you know that when you're hitting those bits, because your teeth are like that, and I'm stood on the back of my heels, and this is the bit, so I'm going to play this bit really good, and you do instinctively know. I get goose pimples when we're in the studio and we're hitting that, and we know that it's, it's going well. I mean, even going back to Northern Soul with Owen, like we used to, Monday and Tuesday be like building up to it, and by the time we hit Wednesday, we'd be like, right, Wednesday's the day, and we'd be on it, and psychologically it made sense,
yeah.
You'd know, Wednesday's
Thursday
the
and Friday
day, So yeah, we do know, we can tell we've got a sense of what is, what we're about, having done it for such a long time. We know the methods now, not in a contrived way. It's something that. It's just something we do, and it happens naturally, It's hard to explain.
Yeah, Rather Be is something I wrote at home not that many months before we ended up in the studio with Verve, actually, and just thought it might be an anthemic tune that they'd enjoy playing, and it seems like they did, and I suppose, lyrically, in a way, it's kind of, we're bombarded with so much information now. I mean, we've had it. There's too much. There's a point where you have to just switch off, because I don't believe we are sort of wired to be able to take in so much information. We become even numb to it, or it makes us very, very fearful of the world outside the door. When you've got the rolling news going, you've got all this death and destruction, and yet, on the other hand, what it's saying is, I'd rather be here. I've said it before, we're on a rock in infinity. We're on this planet, man. It's just isn't that the miracle? Is this the miracle? The miracle is waking up and looking out. And it's very difficult, I think, in the modern age to find time to or space to really invest a bit of thought into the fact that you are on a planet in infinity.
That song, Rather Be, could probably be taken maybe loads of different ways. The original version of it was like quite psychedelic and like quite a lot of head swirl and sort of background loops and sort of mess with your head a little bit. But there was a dilemma really that we take it in the sort of 60s soul vein. There's like a sort of element of maybe, I don't know, Booker T underneath and something that I'd like to sort of revisit a few times, actually. That, yeah. I mean, the original version for me is probably my favourite, but I think for clarity's sake, we ended up going with the song bit. I mean, my sort of passion is for things that don't sound quite right, really.
One of the lines in Judas, she says, is based around fact. I was in New York City, and I always found it intriguing that in the big coffee shop just on Columbus Circle, because it was so busy, they would always ask your name so they could write it on the cup. And I'm always intrigued by the power of any word, and specifically names. Obviously, there has not been many Adolf Hitlers born post-Second World War, and there's also not been many Judases, perhaps none. It's a name that's been vilified. And so when I was in this coffee shop, I decided that I was going to order a latte double shot, and she said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Judas," because it was packed, and I wanted to see the reaction when she said, "Latte double shot for Judas," which she did, and it does, and it causes this, like, who on earth would be called that, you know? And it's incredible that that word 2,000 years later can still have such power. And at the end, in the chorus of Judas, it goes into all it says is let it go, because surely that is the message, and that's really the motivation for that song. But it's an example of where this is reality. This is just a funny social experiment, you know.
That was the first day, actually. That was the very first day, I think, of recording, and it was one of those sort of joyous bits of music. I don't know whether it was because it was sunny outside or whatever, but it was one of those things that sort of hairs on the back of your neck stood up, and it wasn't really that dissimilar to how it is in its form now, but there isn't really much going on in the mid-range. Like, I mean, it's a skeletal tune, and that's definitely one for the dub revisit, I think. It's but the sort of chorus section was when we tried to learn it again a few days later, which is always the case with us. Like we play things, can't remember how to play it, and then a new bit comes out of it, which is, you know, I hate the word because it's sort of bandied around by media types. It's organic, you know. It's sort of self-generative, really. Like, you know, one thing suggests another, and I think we've kind of become adepts, really.
And that was another one that instantly we just came together that was in the first week as well, wasn't it? I think Judas. Another one that me and Pete started playing a groove, and then Nick started playing the beautiful guitar over the top, and it was just one of those things that happened. That's the first time we played it. That's the take we used, and a lot of these songs on the album are first takes. You know, they're all. Yeah,
we tried going back and redoing some of them, but just couldn't get the emotion of that first. Even though we get it more perfect, that's in technical sense, but just couldn't get the emotion of what we did the first time. So
I leave my mistakes on the record. No one else can probably hear them, but I know where all my mistakes are, and it's like I don't want to touch it because that is a unique take. I don't want to go back in and touch up that bit there, touch up that bit. Obviously, if it's a big blooper, then you will, but I am quite strict with myself in the sense that, yeah, if there's a bit of a mistake there, that's character, you know what I mean? That takes confidence to do that, because a lot of people will be like, oh, I can't do that. But to me, it's like, you know, that that's what a band should sound like. People have got so wrapped up in production and stuff that I guess they're scared to show the flaws, but I don't think we ever have been, you know. Numbness, it does sound like it's quite skeletal in its sound, and yeah, it reminds me of some of our earlier records. That was another one that was
just bass in it.
It was just one take again. In fact, that song, we'd forgotten that we'd done it, and it was only later when the engineer went back through the tapes and said, I found this really good track, like Numbness, and he played it. I was like, I can't remember playing that, like there was so many hours of music. But yeah, that's another one there's no overdub. I think there's one guitar overdub on that. Everything else you hear is completely live, you know. And I think with our band, we were always geared, especially around on our second album, Northern Soul, it was a real determination to play live, get live takes.
Yeah.
And
it reminds me of Northern Soul.
It does, in that sense, it does. The fact that it's really raw, it's live, it's just pure, it's more emotion and feeling than like, you know, a crafted song.
You know, I didn't want the album to be full of my songs because I didn't see the point. Because I'll be writing my songs, doing my own thing for the rest of my life. But it'd be good to have a mix, and I think something like Numbness was one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of get back together with the lads, the kind of song I wanted to create. And I think Nick's style, actually, when we started playing again, he seemed to be playing more of a Storm in Heaven, just post Storm in Heaven kind of style of guitarist sound. Yeah, I think it's just one of them. It's not a. There's nothing really deep and meaningful about the lyrics.
Me and Si at the end of the second set of sessions in Richmond got a whiteboard in and had a look at what we had, and we got like 35. The guy that engineered it got 64 or 65, so we started scouring the hard disk to see what we had, and Tucked Away was this thing that we later remembered playing very late at night, and it's probably my favourite tune on the record, actually. It's the least considered, and it's had the least work done to it, but it's somehow truer for it, I think, really. And I think Richard's vocal on that is probably one of my favourite things that he's ever done. It gets me there. I keep joking about it. I can't listen to that after 6 o'clock at night because it just depresses me too much.
Icy Houses, lyrically, it's quite a bleak song, I think. It's
quite cold, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite cold, but it's still got a certain grandiosity to it. Like, I don't know, I think because Richard's got a knack of doing that, you know. He can be really, it feels like he's singing right in your ear, and then the next bit of music takes you off somewhere else. No, I'd rather not know. I'd rather be the punter still, you know what I mean? I'd rather interpret songs myself.
Sometimes, yeah. Really. Sometimes if you know it, they're not as good as when you don't know. Because you make your own up, don't you?
Yeah, I think I've asked him a couple of times and it spoiled it for me, so I've never asked again. Like, you know, I'd rather make my own interpretation of it. And we're always way off the mark, I'm sure.
Icy Houses is, I don't know, the chord-wise, I mean, I kind of, I get blasted with a lot of classical stuff, when I go to my wife's parents' house, and that seeped in, I think, to some of those chords. Houses is kind of talking, I suppose, in the chorus is it's kind of a conversation with myself or somebody else who's kind of going on the reincarnation tip, but you're kind of wondering how many lives these people are going to waste, or, you know, it's kind of like a man daydreaming, looking out of his window, looking down at the police tape and the floral tributes and the funeral procession and the same cycle, which is played out on streets of London, certain inner cities around this country. You know, it seems quite an alarming rate at the moment, and kind of wanted to create that atmosphere really with that song. And I think you know, the lads did well in creating that sort of, don't want to say sonic landscape, but I have.
Icy Houses, again, sort of first 4 days, I think, the drum machine that I insisted putting on that, everybody told me sounded like Phil Collins, so, but I had to battle for that. But yeah, that was sort of 3 chords, Richard sat at the electric piano, and then half an hour later we've got a song, you know. A journey where you've got peaks and troughs, and is there a song in here? And then revisiting and sort of refining, finessing things. Not actually knowing the content of the song, I found myself playing the guitar with a knife at one point, and some kind of weird connection there. I think the content of it, you know, couldn't really hear the lyrics. I do the one headphone on, one off, so generally I can hear, you know, impressions of what everybody else is doing without the full picture.
Noise Epic, no, that's an epic one. I think Nick and the rest of them will probably give a better account of how that came together, because I've almost got no memory of us putting it down. It's beautiful. I mean, Nick fought quite hard to keep that as this 3-section piece. And I was working on the last section. I was thinking, oh, maybe it should be just on its own, because it's such a high-powered, insane piece of music, the last section of Noise Epic. But again, I think the position we found ourselves in was a good position. It wasn't a position like we were 2 years after Urban Hymns following Urban Hymns up. We're not necessarily, you know, got 3-year tours lined up where I've got to pack these things of supposed hits. It actually gave us breathing space. Noise Epic's a good example of that. It's something that Verve fans of a Northern Soul, Storm in Heaven, are going to really enjoy, and it's something to put on in the car, and you know, it's a good driving piece of music, and like I say, it's got space and it's got different movements. It's not limited by time or structure or any of the sort of classic things that you're normally kind of limited to when you're creating a piece of music, you know.
That was a few different segments that sort of, at some point I decided they all worked together really, and I was pretty insistent on it being this like Frankenstein thing of different chunks stuck together. The first section of it is actually, it was as it is really. It got condensed into, you know, certain sections getting chopped out. It was one of those things that the more we listened to it, the more we enjoyed it really. Like me and Si used to spend like evenings just enjoying getting our heads ripped off by it as well.
I mean, the jam itself was probably about an hour long that we took that from, and just chose all the best bits. But yeah, it's got a real psych edge to it as well. It's really, I mean, I love that.
Nick who started the old editing process on that one, wasn't it?
Yeah. Nick had a set idea of which pieces had worked together within the jam, and again, it was putting this jigsaw together. And hats off to Nick for that, because he had a pure vision on that song of like, you know, all the bits, how it should all fit together. What happened on our first album, A Storm in Heaven, is that we'd used all the songs that we got signed up. We had about 5-6 songs. It probably happens to every band. We used all them up on the singles and B-sides. And we went in at the age of, I was 19 then. I remember some of the days, mornings, waking up in a panic thinking, we've got no songs, what are we going to do? So this is how we learned to like do all this, you know, and we've just kind of gone with it. I guess as we've got more confident as musicians, we've got the ability to fulfill that dream now, whereas before it was much more tense. And like, I remember Richard doing vocals on the last day on our first album, supposed to be mixing, and he's still not finished singing, you know. It was that up to the like 3 a.m. on the last day, John Leckie saying, come on, you got to finish it like that. So we've always been kind of, because of that early experience under that pressure, it seemed I think we could go in tomorrow and do another record, couldn't we, without any material and start again from scratch, you know, and we'll come out with something complete. Like you say, it's not a premeditated, right, we've got this song, that's going to be on side 1, and we know how it's going to sound, we know how we want it recorded. It's not like that at all, you know. I think it's pure expression.
The term Valium skies has been in my mind for 10, 15 years, and you get them all over the country, but back home, up north, sometimes that grey cloud seemed so low you can almost touch it. But it was also a metaphor for depression, and it's about being with someone who recognises almost where you can go, how dark you can go, but still is with you, isn't abandoning you every time you're breaking down, isn't, you know, when it comes to my Valium skies, she don't mind if I cry, and it's I think that's, it's a test of any relationship, I think. And really, I was trying to get that across. I think it's one of them songs that you first hear, and then after a couple of listens, the chorus had me for about a month after we recorded it. I couldn't get it out of my mind. And it doesn't seem like an obvious single song or anything. And, again, good playing by everyone, great guitars and good work.
That's a definite. Richard came in with a full idea for that. But again, it was used and then forgotten. There's loads of stuff from and when he came in on his own for a day, and he turned up, and he pretty much structured the whole song, hadn't he?
I can't remember how all of them come together. But I knew it was one of the days that Richie did lots of songs.
He'd done all the vocals, and it wasn't like the idea we'd heard before wasn't fully structured. And he'd come in and he took it and structured the whole thing. But we just did our thing over the top, didn't we?
I think so, pretty much on that one. It's hard to remember how they all come about, but I think with Valium Skies, I think Richard, he's got so many songs, so many ideas. He'll come in one day and he'll do 15 songs that he's been storing up, and that was one that, again, going through the tape, someone's, oh, that's a good song, blah blah blah. You take it home on a CD at the weekend, listen to it, and then you come up with your parts, and we overdubbed onto that one and kind of did the production thing.
What I was kind of aiming for with that was just to do the textured thing, really. And we sort of looked at it for a while and thought, on a sonic level, just to shift the focus of things with it, really, and turn it into something slightly symphonic. And the thing, again, getting back to guitar geekery, sometimes where strings would naturally be, it's nicer to have that rough thing that approaches what strings would do, I'm really happy with the way that came out, actually, giving it a different perspective and a different sort of tonal palette or whatever. It was an experiment, really, and we tried a couple of things with it, and that seemed to be the one that I liked most, really.
Yeah, Columbo. I'm just glad that these things have made it on it. They're normally the things that don't make it on it. And again, I think the freedom that we found allows us to do that. And in a way, I wish we could have put everything that we recorded on this record. But, I think, especially in this day and age, no one's got the time to listen to half a track, Because we can't put an estimate on whether we'll ever make an album again, whether we'll make an album X amount of years. We really don't know. So I think that's the beauty, is that we can put a Columbo on another journey track on this record, something that, it just goes beyond the normal parameters. It takes you on a trip, and Nick fought pretty hard for it to be on the record, which is good, because I think Nick's had an opportunity on this record to show a lot of different styles of what he can play.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the essence of what we do. I absolutely love that track, and it's where Love Is Noise has come from, and I think it's a good insight for people to listen to. They can listen to that track and maybe not relate it to Love Is Noise, but at some point they will realise that they go together like that. It's two songs. We got two songs out of this beautiful jam. And for people to be able to understand that process and see it, I think that's fantastic. And it's it's an out there piece of music. I can't explain what it is. To me, I don't know, it sounds like something off a soundtrack, some sort of sci-fi thing to me.
First bit's great, isn't it?
But yeah, it's got all the elements that I love, the looseness and the kind of, you don't know what's going to happen, it falls apart in the middle, comes back together. Love Nick's guitar line on that, it's amazing.
We kind of knew that these sort of different segments would somehow fit together. One of which was a tune from 1993, I think, Muhammad Ali, and somehow they kind of had this weird overlap between the three different things. We kind of went back to Columbo the next day, and we were calling one section. When we come to edit, we kind of identify sections by, it sounds a little bit like this. So there's the Devo Can section, and the Stonesy section, and the Muhammad Ali bit that never actually found its way back into Columbo, but generated quite a lot of ideas for it. It was something that Richard's had for a few years, apparently. Again, a guitar loop. Richard starts playing guitar, Si and Pete come in, and this song unfolds that's just got me sort of sort of chilled me to the bone, like playing that thing. The end section of that, I think, is again up there with Richard's greatest vocals ever. And for a while, like 5 a.m, round at somebody's house, listen to this, Richard Ashcroft. And again, a rambling sort of slightly incoherent version of a song, really, but with a bit of honing. It could be in my top 3 favourite Verve tracks, I think, really. You kind of hear, the Verve sort of in full flight there, really. And if I need to remind myself about what it is that's good about our band, I think that's a really good example of it. So it's just sort of surging, full of energy and quite frightening in its own way, I think, really. And it'd be nice to play that live, actually. It's shaping up quite nicely.
Appalachian Springs, I mean, I remember some pretty chilling times at 5:30, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning on a rainy day, having been up all night in Wigan, perhaps been down to the Wigan Pier discotheque on a Wednesday night, and find yourself in some weird flat looking in a mirror in a bathroom, and those moments where you don't recognise yourself whatsoever. You look 70 years old, and that was an image that came back to me for a certain part of the song. But what I like about it the best, it really just breathes this song, and it reaches a great crescendo, and Nick was banging on about the vocals at the end, saying, it's the best vocal you've ever done in your life. He was so into it. So I think it stayed on the album really because of maybe Nick's sort of excitement about it and his positive input into it. So I knew that, Nick could do something pretty special on a song like Appalachian Springs, because it was right up his street, and, he was very supportive of that song right from the start, where I maybe had lost that initial respect for the tune or love for the song. He kind of helped take that to its rightful conclusion and created something pretty amazing on it.
Yeah, that's my favourite at the moment.
He's got a great vocal performance on it, though. He's giving it more naturally, like he would live, because the original vocal in it.
It is. I think. Well, I've left my. It's all our original parts intact, isn't it? We'd never heard the song before. Richard started. For all I knew, it was just a jam, and he'd just written them there. But he'd actually already had the song. Never heard it before in our lives, and the take that's on the album is the first time I'd ever played it. Likewise for Pete and Nick. Now, again, it's just that, having the confidence to do that and say, well, we're not going to better this. There's no point going back and all right, now we know the cause and we know it. Then we could
clean it up and make it more right, but it won't
make it into
won't be as emotional. It won't make you feel the same way. It could be more, all the emotion, you can remove the emotion by clearly, making things too right.
I'll leave it up to the listener to make of it what they will,